Welcome to Out of My Mouth, the program where raw thoughts meet unfiltered conversations.
Join us as we dive into the depths of human experience, where we share stories, perspectives, and insights that just might challenge the status quo.
Get ready to laugh, cry, and ponder the world around you like never before. This is Out of My Mouth.
The views and opinions of our guest and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of New Thought Media Network, or any organization we may be affiliated with. Here at New Thought Media Network, we welcome freedom of speech and courageous conversations. There are many topics that can be difficult to navigate. Challenging the status quo and engaging in lively debate is important to expanding our understanding of one another, and life in general. Creating a peaceful world doesn't happen because no one disagrees, it happens from a willingness to understanding one another. In our programming, we strive to expand consciousness and assist people in creating remarkable lives. Your comments are welcome at info@ntmedia.org.
Welcome to Out of My Mouth, and who knows what's going to come out of my mouth. My name is Marg Dupuy, and my co-host is
Cheryl Rogers.
Welcome,
Yeah,
Cheryl.
thank you.
And before I invite you to introduce our awesome guest, Martha Creek, today, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge the land that we are on. In the spirit of reconciliation and peace, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet on these sacred lands. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of the land for thousands of years. We recognize our oneness. We realize our history. We choose to create a new reality. We are one. Miigwech.
Miigwech.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marg. And it is my honor and my privilege to welcome back Reverend Dr. Martha Creek, who is known for trainings approaching in the work as a venture with a sense of curiosity and wonder. And Martha is a master at the art of right questioning, and I can attest to that. She calls forth the most stubborn and self-defeating patterns to create a new way of being, literally a new way of being. And I'm fortunate enough to be in Martha's annual program is leadership. She does one for immersion skills and leadership skills. And so Martha, I'll let you speak to that.
Cheryl, I'm going to interrupt you. Your Wi-Fi is going a bit in and out, and I will invite Martha. Thank you for coming with us today, coming into the program with us today. And please say a little bit about yourself that maybe didn't get translated over the bio.
Oh, thank you, honey. Well, I prefer less bio, and people that want it, honestly, I just send you over there to the website, marthacreek.com. It's got all my credentials, who I know, who I don't, who I blow. It's all right there. So get on over there and see. I am trained, highly trained. I also have some mastery in questioning, and I've been trained to facilitate crucial conversations and the work of Byron Katie over the years. So the bio's there, and Cheryl, your kind words to even offer it, especially I can attest to it, is a reward, an acknowledgement for me way beyond the bio. And Marg, your heart for this and the fact that you welcome me back here in your show and come forward as authentically and directly as you do, courageously here, is really the topic of the show, which is looking at IFS as a foundation for how we are being in the world. And I'll be changed today through our work together here. And I believe y'all will in some way, and the listeners will be. And if quantum theory is true, then we have changed the entire scope today through our devotion and spiritual practice here. So I am here for that reason, and to do my own inner work, to serve those who serve, and to make whatever contribution I can to the well-being of all beings. And I'm here wholeheartedly and with a great deal of appreciation for y'all and who you are and what you are in the world.
Thank you. Before we go on, can you please tell us what the acronym means?
IFS,
Yes, please.
Internal Family Systems. And it refers to the parts of us within ourselves that is also representative of an external family. So the authority figure, the quiet one, the estranged one, the addicted one, the angry one, things that were very real for us in our external family systems. Those parts and similar parts exist inside of us as well. And most of us have been so focused on the other and trying to get the others to straighten out and calm down and sober up and everything else under the sun. We've not given as much attention or care, nurturing, and support to our inner world. So it is a way then to say, it's my responsibility to parent me. It's my responsibility at whatever age and stage to be the mother that I wanted, wished I had, and didn't have, to be the father that I wanted, wished I had, and didn't have, and to do that for that younger part of myself now. And we were so hurt by many things growing up innocently. And I don't blame my parents. I absolutely don't. It's a miracle they did as well as they did under the circumstances they were in. And I can't help that I was hurt by some of the things that went on there. And I'm mindful now and taking accountability and responsibility to myself to go back to those parts in me that's been burdened, exiled, hurt, and the word I use that seems to be most accurate to me is disintegrated, disowned, denied, depressed, suppressed. So it's a look, acknowledging that this exists and not giving the responsibility of that over to somebody else. And
That's easier, isn't it?
well, it's not easy for some, Marg. It's a very, very, very scary territory when we kind of roll over the log that we've hidden very well, we've denied we have it, we've desperately worked to keep up a persona of being a certain kind of person. We don't want the world to know what we really think and what we really believe or how we really are. So keeping the false face on, keeping the mask on is not easy, and it eventually sucks the soul out of us to some degree. That it's like holding a big giant, trying to hold a big giant ball underwater, and it simply cannot be done. At some point, those parts of us are going to take over and going to step forward, and we'll have a big outburst. We'll have something snarky or sarcastic or deflecting or accusing. So what we wouldn't call our highest self comes forward that says, I'm having a tantrum, I'm on a rant, here are things we're not proud of that we've disowned about ourselves, instead of saying those parts are also included in my humanity, and trying to shut them down and stuff them down and get them to cooperate and get good, tight and buttoned up won't work eventually, because in the right circumstance and the perfect storm, it's going to it's going to come out sideways sometimes, those
Right.
behaviors.
I realized that a few months ago in a situation. So just to backtrack, when I made a smart ass remark and saying, isn't it easier to blame somebody else than to blame oneself, or to take ownership, not blame, ownership for a behavior or whatever. And what I'm hearing you say, Martha, I think, is that really it isn't easier because we're paying the price of submerging that ball.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's not easy to do the work, but as far as I'm concerned, it's just a question of not if we'll do the work, just when, and how painful and dysfunctional will it have to get before I say, okay, I've got to actually open the door and see what's in here and what's put all these triggers in place and what's caused me to have the certain reactions that I do, and to do so with less judgment, with self compassion, with some understanding. And to the degree that I can do that, then my highest self is more likely going to stay in the lead. Those other hurt parts are less likely to take over, and those big energies come out, which we claim we want to end war and things like that. We claim we want peace in the world. And if it's true, then it will not ever see it out in the world until I have more peace in here, and not just as a platitude of peace, as an actual embodiment of that.
So can you give us an example of some of the parts that we're talking about?
Oh, yes, and glad you asked. So everybody can get out their little sheets of paper and see, can you identify with any of these? So it would start with some of my most dominant parts, which is I'd call an analyzer or a scientist that's always trying to figure things out and connect the dots and make sense of something. It also is, so there, another side of that is a curiosity, and curiosity is of a high self. It's a superpower, so to speak. But when curiosity goes amok, it's like, gotta know right now, gotta know what that mean. Oh my, how'd you look at me? Or her eyebrow went up. What's that supposed to mean? What's that tone of voice mean? Oh my God, this doesn't connect. They didn't make, that wasn't clear, this bewilderment. So this analyzer that's caught in this incessant gerbil wheel of figure it out, analyze, which includes theorizing, speculating, postulating, and needing to know. And all of that's in place because we're afraid of not knowing. We're afraid to say, I don't know, because it was not okay. And it questions and threatens our safety, our value, and our power to say, I actually don't know, and let that be okay. Perfectionist is a classic one. Like it's not ever good enough. Like I can't complete something because it wasn't like what I had in mind, or it wasn't as good as hers, or I can't go out and write a book because it may not be a big bestseller, or I can't get up and do a talk because I'm not Richard Schwartz or Marianne Williamson or some silver-throated orator. So this perfectionism that causes us to compare ourselves to others, and that compare equals despair in most cases. And then the parts get even more afraid. It also includes the inner critic. Voices like, oh God, that was so dumb. How could you be so dumb? That was a big mistake. What's wrong with you? You did it wrong. You're flawed. You're faulty in some way. So some voice of an inner critic. There's also a procrastinator that will just kick the can down the road. Don't step in here. Just put this off as long as you can. And all of this is based on keeping our already drawn paradigms in place. Don't rock the boat, so to speak, because these protector parts of us have got a system in place that looks like it works. It generally works, although it's burdensome on the protector parts and extremely burdensome on the parts that it's trying to keep safe. And also, and John, that may be your point, these parts have taken a rap over the years as being bad parts of us, or less evolved parts of us. And I don't think that's true. These are unhealed parts of us. That's all. and they're going to continue to function and even get more rigid in the ways that they function until we meet them with some understanding and bring some nurturing and caring and healing to them that they've been calling for all of our days. So there's long list, honey: people pleaser, caretaker, a hyper vigilant, always on guard. One of my friends identified this week the part that is always worried, a dread part that is always waiting for the next shoe to drop, for the next shoe to fall, if that's a term that people would understand.
Mhm.
So it goes on and on, honey.
And I remember correctly when I first started learning about these internal family systems, what John's referred to, and maybe this aligns, is that these parts develop over years as a survival mechanism.
Definitely.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right.
That's such a valid point. So, and then therefore, in that system, the mind doesn't know the difference when somebody is rude or angry or threatens me, that they're threatening my survival, versus they have no power over me. They're not threatening my survival, but that's my nervous system is in response to it as though it is survival. And survival is triggered. And when our survival mechanisms are triggered, we get much more animalistic. And I don't mean mammalistic. I mean fight, flight, or freeze. So regressive behaviors. And then that causes that part of us, that protector part, those firefighter parts of us, to come forward to go, wait just a minute. So it'll either go for it. If it's patterned to conflict, it'll go for it, or it'll get, if it's patterned to flight, it's like, I'm out of here. I cannot be here. I'm out of here. Or it'll just freeze over, get quiet, shut down, try to get invisible. And these are hardwired in us. We're absolutely innocent in this. And with care and nurturing and work, we absolutely can form ways to live in a bigger upper part of our brain instead of this regressive, triggered part of our brain.
Yeah. So, and it's understanding the trigger and having a method of looking at them and addressing them. And I'm sure there's other methods too. However, this is one method that has worked for many, you included, that we're talking about here today. So I also remember that what happens is the same kind of behaviors in our childhood repeated, so our reactions are repeated, and then it becomes it's almost like it's automatic. It becomes an automatic reaction later on in life that we're not even aware of why it's there and what it's from.
That's exactly right. And that is the word. Psychologically and scientifically, it's an automatic response, a knee-jerk and instinctual response. That's more like a reaction instead of a response. So there was no thought in it. Just like if you touch a stove, your hand is going to jerk back. If someone steps on your toe, you're going to say ouch, or try to move your foot. There's going to be some reaction to that. And there's nothing conscious about it other than something just hurt me. This was problematic. And that is our inherent, instinctual, automatic response to it. And this work and other works and whatever works for people, this is, as you said clearly, one approach to say, over time and with practice, there can be some nurturing and healing of these parts that cause them to less likely take over. So they're all included. They're here. They're all vital. All parts are vital. That's one of the key components of ISF. There are no bad parts. And that is a very large departure from some of the ways we've been taught, that you are bad and your ways are bad, and the way you said that is bad, and the way you look is bad, and the way you think is bad. And it's like we can't help that. That's part of our human natureness, and to go into those parts that we called bad and encourage them instead of more shame, more blame, more guilt.
Right. Yeah. I love that there's no bad parts. And I think from having done some of this work with you, it's really about about having a look at those parts and bringing an awareness about them and to them, so that we can actually speak to them, and address them in a way that we can be able to not get rid of them, but be able to move them aside to be a better self.
Well, I'd say yes to all of that, except we don't move them aside.
Okay.
They move aside as they're healed.
Yeah.
They move aside as they get understanding. They move aside from my direct experience. So I'm not moving them. And even I don't have power to move them. I can encourage them to move. I can show them the benefits to the system of their collaboration and not being so extreme. I actually ask them to pull in their energies at times, to let another part here take the lead on this. And over time and with trust and with healing, they absolutely do and will do that. And that includes looking at some of these feelings that they've been guarding in us, that include feelings of confusion and bewilderment. And today, working with a lady directly, she says, I just don't have clear guidance. I just need some guidance. And we can't bear the confusion, the bewilderment, particularly when we're accustomed to having clear decision making and clear guidance. And it seems very obvious which way I should go here. And when life doesn't show up as that, then this fear of like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Instead of bearing that and then going to that part of us and letting it know it's okay. It's okay. It's true. We don't have clear guidance on this, and we're still safe. We're safe here together. There's nothing at risk here. Even though it may feel like a threat, it's not an actual threat. It's not clear yet. And in those times, and coaches over the years encouraged me and others to, when it's like being in the fog. When there's fog, you can't see way up the road. You can just see like 3 feet in front of you. And it's like, dim the lights and slow down and know that the fog will pass, and it will pass on its own timing, not on mine. I will not will the fog off of me. So fog will lift and fog will dissipate on its own nature, through its own nature, not because I need the fog to go or I need the confusion or the bewilderment to go. And grief and sadness, almost myself for 40 some years, bypassed grief. like I'm just not going there. All is well. She's in a better place. And instead of letting the feelings of grief, my angst that somebody had died, or my regrets about it, or my simply missing them, humanly missing them, I never gave any space to. And I know better than that now. And I've made amends to that, and I do it differently now. But it was 40 some years of a spiritually bypassing that and not allowing grief and sadness. It also include rage, like outburst and intense angers and things that we were afraid of as kids. And like in my case, I made a vow to myself that I wasn't going to do it because of how much it disturbed me when the people around me, primarily my mother, was enraged and outraged. And I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know what I ain't going to do.
Yeah.
That was disowning that part of me. And it's not been helpful for me to be out of touch with that part of me. There's a time for me to have some of that, for me to express some of that. And I personally don't want to do it on people or at people and even with people. And when I do, I don't want to take it on as more self-hate and recrimination and shame and blame and guilt either. That's a part of my humanness. And if I'm triggered just right, it'll be there.
Yeah, so I'm going to give Mark a chance. I just have a question, because when you said spiritual process and grieving, and sort of saying she's in a better place, he's in a better place, and everything's okay, how do you come to the awareness that there was this grief?
So I didn't get all of your question, honey. If you can put it in the chat to me, I can respond a little better for that.
Okay.
And it was something to do with the platitudes around death and saying that they're in a better place and all that. And it was a way for me that I had of coping with the pains of loss, the coping with grief and my losses and things like that. And it did not serve me over time for me to suppress, depress, disown, and deny the feelings that I had around grief. And it became important then for me to process that instead of to deny that it's there. And other scientific models, including like one of the bestsellers called The Body Keeps the Score, informs us that any of that that's not processed is waiting for us, that it's stored in our cells and in our bodies and things. So it became much more important to me, vital for my own well-being, for me to go back to all of those things that I denied and to say, you're welcome here. And I've got enough self on board now in most cases to meet all of those parts with some understanding.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Your body keeps the score. That's
Wow.
interesting. Yeah.
How did I become aware that I'd suppressed or denied the grief and grieving? And that's the question's loaded, honey, but it started at a mystery school I was in several years ago, and it was time for the grief process. I said, well, I can hold the space for everybody because I don't have any grief. And of course, they looked at me like my head was on backwards. And I said, oh, no, seriously, I've never had anything bad happen to me. Like I've not had any real significant earth-shattering losses. I can absolutely hold the space for this particular part of our mystery school. And then that we built a wailing wall. We got everything set up for this particular segment of this school. And this African drumming started. This teacher that was there. And just a few strikes of that drum, and something shook loose in me, and I ran like a sprinter to the wailing wall, got down on my hands and knees, my head on the floor, and bawled my ever-loving guts out for no known reason. Not because I was thinking about somebody or something.
Mm-hmm.
Grief poured out of me in buckets that I didn't even know was there. So things like that. There's been other occasions like that I was aware that this was like a pressure cooker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And John, what I said was that was my platitude about grief. To say that nothing bad had ever happened to me. That is a denial of all the pain that I've had, the hurts that I've had, the disappointments I've had, the frustrations, the losses, the grief. That was a spiritually bypassing of those feelings about just how hurt I had been.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
As you're talking, there's I'm reliving a moment that happened a couple of months ago in my life. I don't need to share the details of the who, what, where, but I can say that I was in fight and flight in seconds, extreme behavior where I was literally going to run out the door and then turn around and felt the need to stand my ground and went face to face with somebody. And later, even though I felt justified in my reaction, I don't know if that's the words I want to say, but I knew I didn't want to show up in the world as this person with this particular reaction. And as you're talking, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I think there's a little bit more to dig up. I've rationalized my behavior. No, I don't want to go there, but there's more under the pressure cooker that I think I will be exploring a little bit more of.
I hope so. And at a minimum, to give some compassion for ourselves in situations like that none of us, regardless of how trained we are or skilled or gifted, is immune from our nature, our instinct, and these hardwired triggers that we have, that in any minute it can go from 0 to that, just like that, in a perfect storm situation. And when you add to it, when we've not rested properly, we've not prayed or meditated or done anything relative to a spiritual practice, lost sleep, haven't, hangry, whatever we would call it, our tendencies for that are much greater, that we are not going to have the resources to stay calmer or to take a pause or whatever, that trigger point is thinner. We're more likely to be triggered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was above that. I thought I had worked through, the shit, and I would no longer ever react in that way. Yeah, I'm guessing that is a possibility until I'm no longer on this side of the earth.
I believe that's right, and I hope if anybody takes anything away from the show today, that they take that away. That this is our tendency for this goes with us throughout our life. And so some degree of this will be taken to the grave with us. And that then we are human and show up in our humanness, we can have self-compassion instead of self-hatred, which is the goal.
And on that note, we're already over halfway. So what a wonderful discussion. And let's continue it, because it really is so meaningful and deep, I think.
Cheryl is saying we need to go to a break right now. Because you're cutting off up, Cheryl, I'm just going to interrupt and say, let's go to a break and we'll come right back.
New Thought Media Network proudly presents the 2025 season for Nonviolence Meditation Series, January 31st through April 4th. Embrace nonviolence every day with our 64 unique video meditations. Join us at 6 a.m. Mountain Time or watch anytime on our YouTube channel. Featuring a collection of New Thought voices, the 2025 season for Nonviolence Meditation Series. Only on New Thought Media Network, January 31st through April 4th.
Join our celebration of Black History Month. Only on New Thought Media Network. New videos every day at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, or watch anytime on our YouTube channel. 28 unique Black History moments. Every day in February. Only on New Thought Media Network.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network. positively inspiring.
And we're back.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say hi to Noelle because I saw her earlier. So thank you for telling us you're here, Noelle. And please, anybody else who's here, type your name in the chat and let us know that you joined us.
Yeah, welcome everybody. Lovely to be with you, whoever you are.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and John is leaving us, it seems.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, John. So am I still breaking up?
Periodically, my dear.
Okay, so I hand it to you for now, Mark.
Okay, and maybe just put in the chat if you want me to vocalize something on your behalf, Cheryl.
Thank you.
So you offer a coaching class on this book, Martha, is that correct?
Well, let me make clear that I'm not a therapist. I have no license for therapy. I'm in my own therapy. And I study IFS from the books that are written, which are No Bad Parts. And the one I'm using as an immersive process this year as a book study and to lead participants through is one called Greater Than the Sum of Our Parts. And that is an audio book, and it is sessions. Actually, Dr. Richard Schwartz doing sessions with people for healing the parts in their own systems. So it's a program that goes together to say that we can support one another in an environment like this.
Thank you. Do you have anything to say to? Okay, so when we first came on, we weren't live. That you and I were sharing, and I said about our spirit group and talking about friendships and the importance of friendships and being vulnerable and asking for help and being okay to ask for help. And you mentioned that it would be a good thing to bring up during the show today.
Yeah, I think there's like internal opposing forces. So the part of us that wants to have friends and to go toward people and to open up, to be seen, to be connected, and we're wired for that. And then there's another part simultaneously that's like cautious, like don't do that. Don't put yourself out. Don't take the risk. That'll go out and say, "Did you hear her tone of voice?" Or "Do you hear how he said that?" Or like, "You may not be safe with him." So these opposing forces are within us. So we have, and other people have written about this. Dr. Murray Bowen from Family Systems Theory comes to mind, and it includes our tendencies for togetherness, to be together, and the opposing force that once we get a little too close to people, we start to form an intimacy with people, we eventually get hurt by them. They'll let us down, frustrate us, disappoint us. They'll say something that is hurtful, or they weren't there for us, they didn't acknowledge us, they didn't appreciate us, or something will happen and it causes us to come apart. And if we get too extreme in it, we cut off. We literally shut down our hearts. Even if we stay in the relationship, we may get emotionally cut off. So the goal here is to be able to bear the opposing internal forces, to say, I'm drawn to people, I want friendships, and I'm also afraid of them. I want to be seen by people. I want people to get me. I want people to know me. I want to be authentic. And there's a part of me that says, don't go too far with that. Don't open yourself up too far. Don't let them see all of you. And this is the nature of the internal opposing forces. So I hope in sharing this today that people can have a little more peace with that, some exhale to understand how normal it is, and to not judge and hate themselves when they have a desire to have friendship and then get afraid of it, or that they get too afraid that they won't put themselves out. And we're dealing with some more like what's even called an epidemic of cutoff, an epidemic of loneliness, of inwardness. And it's not inward like we're talking about, like when I'm being inward so I can heal my inward parts, but inward because I've actually cut off and I'm too afraid of the world and people and relationships to be out in it as much. And I'm hoping that when people hear things like this and get the resources that we've offered today through this work, there's all sorts of podcasts, free podcasts, and explanations about this, and charts and graphs and everything else in the world to listen to learn from, that I believe and have for me directly and the clients base that I serve extreme value in meeting our parts with a new pair of glasses, so to speak, and an awakened view of how vital and purposeful they all are, no bad parts, and then having enough healing in there that we're actually led by our highest self, which most of us, consciously or unconsciously, have a desire to lead and to live from our highest self. It's just we've not had enough healing yet to do that because our trigger points are still touchy.
And what I was saying before we came on the show is that I realized that my ego is so big in not allowing myself to say, Martha, can you please help me with, or Cheryl, can you please help me with this? And
that's a great example, Marg. The ego has taken a big rap. And it's been made wrong. And even things like stamp out the ego and take down the ego, instead of understanding the ego is more of a broad term for some of these unhealed parts. And particularly the protector, firefighter, manager energies of our parts. That says, now look, you've got burned over there, quit going back over there. You're going to get burned again. And that cautions us in that way. So it's like, if we can today, to stop even, I won't use the word anymore for that same reason, because I had been so mad and at war with the ego for years. And I stopped using the term or referring to it and tried to get more specific about what was really happening there. So instead of ego, in your example, I'm not asking you to change yours. I'm just sharing my own direct experience and the kind of the pit that I got myself in by staying at war with ego, or a concept of ego, actually, to say that it's the part of me that was afraid, the part of me that was afraid of failing, the part of me that was afraid of being hurt, the part of me that didn't really want to deal with it, that the part of me that had just like sweep it under the rug or keep my head in the sand. The part of me that didn't want to face rejection if I offered myself up or something and they said no, or if I was excluded instead of included, the part of me that would be nervousy about that. I can absolutely offer compassion to that part. Instead of get over it, wear your big girl panties, grow yourself up, get over this, you're 60 years old, for God's sake. That inner critic would take over to shame me out of the feelings of fear that I had normally, natural feelings of fear, and that more firefighter inner critic part could take over. And that's how I talk to myself. And it's more and more hurtful. And I don't talk to myself like that as much anymore, because that inner critic has been unburdened some. It sees that I'm not a 3-year-old child anymore, nor a 6-year-old child, nor a 13-year-old girl. And it's kind of up to date now with, hey, there's some inner resources here that's been around the mulberry bush a time or two. There's some inner resources here we can draw on, some real wisdom, instead of having to operate like everything is a threat to us.
I liked how you said as much. I don't do this as much anymore. Similar to what we were saying before, we go to the grave with working on all our parts, right? And yeah, I was going to use the word ego, but no, we're gonna take that lesson. Anyway, I appreciate that you said your humanness.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. That's important, and that also has balanced me in a way, Marg, to say at times, And I say there's been a few transformational points in my life and that I still practice today. And that's one of them at times, or the word sometimes. And Wayne, I think so. We are stardust, star material. We are whole and perfect and complete. And we've not caught up to that yet. Our parts are still moving in the direction of, yes, I'm a star, let me shine. And then another part of us going, well, don't shine too brightly. Don't stick out there too much, because you'll get bit, or they'll knock you out, or they'll reject you, or they'll shame you, or they'll put a big post on Facebook about how wacko you are, or something like that. And it's like being able to bear that if something like that happened, it would likely sting, and I'm okay. It's okay. And just because that happened, it doesn't make it true about me. And I know that I affirmed I'm a star and that I'm beautiful for 40 some years. And all the while I was affirming it, I wasn't believing it. My belief system, my BS, hadn't caught up to my affirmations yet, which is another reason to do affirmations. Eventually, they take hold. There's some root system in there. And I found out that I was some planting seeds on rocks. And until I've kind of unconcreted parts of myself and unstuck parts of myself, the new seeds weren't taking place. Were not taking hold. They didn't have a way to root.
Good visual. I'm prompting Cheryl here to ask a question, but she is being silent.
Well, it looks like she's interacting with some of our guests. So welcome, everybody. I see Leslie is here, and Diane, you made it, and I don't know how you got in here. So I'm just glad all of you all of them have made a big contribution in some of these programs that we do, and certainly Cheryl has in doing their own work. And together we've seen, now this is something that's been it was laughed at, IFS, and this approach to therapy was literally laughed at. And the author speaks about this, of how much heat he took for some kind of notion like this, and how clear he was that this was what was happening. Although he was trained in family systems therapy and family systems approaches, which I've studied quite a bit of, and self-differentiated leadership, that it was like only to the degree that I was willing to deal with the inner world, the inner family members, did I get the kind of lift, the enlightenment, the unburdening, and the new possibility that I have had. So they all served me. They all still serve me well. I've not thrown out the baby with the bathwater here. I use all the modalities, significantly use all the modalities, generally on a daily basis. And this one has been very, very fruitful that we're talking about today.
And if you can hear me, it takes work. You have to work at it. You have to get to know yourself, right? And work with your inner self in order to be able to shift your expression in your outer self, if that makes sense.
It's true, Cheryl, and it's beyond know thyself. It's know thyself and allow thyself. Know thyself and love thyself. And parts of me I cannot love yet. Parts of me I still am at war with, but not as much, and not as often, and not as intensely. So I've not embraced all of my parts yet. However, I'm friendlier toward them. And as a result of me being friendlier to them, guess what?
They're friendlier to you.
They're friendlier to me. And the friendlier we are, then the less we're like this. And the friendlier we are, the less likely they're going to take over. And those big outbursts or their extreme behaviors are not as much anymore.
Which means we can be more often a person that we like.
Yes. Which equals to less shame, less guilt, less recrimination. Yeah. And that's right, Patty. It is like we have called the shadow the disowned parts of ourselves, the disintegrated parts of ourselves. And this is going back into that. And Cheryl, to your point, it can be frightening because we have worked so hard to pretend they weren't there, and to work so hard to keep all of them battened down and buttoned down to make sure nobody else saw them, that when we go back into that dark black cave of our disowned parts, our shadow, our underworld, whatever term you want to give it, it can be frightening.
Yeah.
And until we do, we're living as a hostage to that.
That takes the magnifier, right, to find out those parts, to discover those parts. What I was hearing you say earlier too, when you went to the wailing wall, you didn't know that the grief existed. It was there, but you didn't know it existed. So to go to the levels, to the different parts of myself, I'll need to look at where the magnifier is to discover where they are.
And I not only didn't know it was there, I could not identify it. If you'd have said, okay, now Martha, now that you've cried your guts out for an hour, what was that about? And I had no answer for what that's about. I don't know what it's about. And the good news is I don't need to. And I even believe sincerely that any of us that can cry, we're crying for the whole of humanity. Not just our own parts, but for those in humanity that can't cry and that have needed to cry. And I also feel the same way about some of this rage and this outburst of this for those people that takes over in them, and more often that they lead with that. They're doing that like they're the pressure cooker valve, so to speak. And you see it in groups sometimes where you know that there's an intense energy here, but you don't really know what's going on here. And then there'll be a big blast of some sort. And it's like somebody in that group represented the pressure cooker valve on that to let some of that pressure off. And it happened with me just about a month ago. That I was in a situation that I was not rested. I'd only slept a few hours, 3 nights in a row. And I was pushing myself to keep my word, to keep my commitments, to keep a schedule. So can you kind of identify which part this is? And it was denying the part that was tired, that was exhausted. It was also denying the part that was supposedly on a vacation. Not to have to live every day like this, like I live when I am keeping a very full schedule. And something happened with just an innocent card game. And somebody said, well, she didn't have her turn. And I said, well, this is just a play hand. We're all trying to learn how to play this game. And she said she's already had her turn. Like, don't give her another turn. And I said, she's going to take another turn. She didn't get a turn because we didn't even know how to play this. And she said again, she's already had her turn. And I said in a very loud voice, let her have her turn. It's like, man, what I'll share about that is my hand went right to my heart when that came out. And it may have been the first time in 60 some years that I had compassion for myself. But instead of going over there, are you okay? Are you okay? Did I hurt you? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh my God, so sorry. I went here first. And I met that part with some compassion. Like, no wonder. It's no wonder you yelled out like that. You're barely hanging on by a thread here. With so little rest, so much pushing, and it's okay. And then after that, I also interrupted the patterning that would have went, oh my God, y'all, I'm so sorry. And I would have went into explaining how I've not slept and how that wasn't my true self. And then I didn't do it. So another major part of that was I did not take responsibility for their feelings.
Yeah.
I didn't. And guess what? We all survived it.
Mm-hmm.
We all survived it.
What a great example, Martha. Really, thank you for that. That's one of the things I have to say I love about you is you live your talk, you experience it, you share it. And so it's a great example to us. And almost, and this is probably something, one of my parts, gives me permission to do the same, right?
Yeah, it's true, honey. Well, self is contagious,
Mm-hmm.
which is what makes us attracted and attractive to certain people because they generally have their highest self in lead.
Mm-hmm.
And it's consistent. So that every time somebody sees her or me or you, it's like, I like her. I feel good with her. I want more time with her. I want to enroll in what she's doing. So that's contagious because it shows us the part of ourselves that is a match for that sincerely wants our highest self to lead too.
Mm-hmm.
And also the other is contagious. So that then if I come out with what is wrong with you, like how dare you, and yourself is not in the lead, your big protectors and defenders come out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's contagious also, like throwing gas on a flame.
Right.
So that's why it's important to at times like that when we clearly can see my highest self is not in the lead, to tell the truth and to tell it quick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I cannot proceed with this conversation. I'm too emotional. I've got to square myself away. I've got to take a time for silence or for rest or to get some food or whatever may restore me. And then I'll come back to this conversation when I'm able to. And I don't have enough self online now to proceed with this.
Mm-hmm.
And if any one of us can do that, we won't end up in war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beautiful. And I just want to thank everybody for their comments. Patty says, wow, this is probably the most important conversation I've heard from Unity folk. Teresa says, what a gift to realize we're not here to get rid of any part. Thank you, IFS and Martha's contribution to healing in this world. Patty also said, she referred to something you said earlier about also as spiritual handholders, so important to examine the shadow so we can show up authentically for others. And Carl is joining us from Evanston, North Shore, Chicago. Teresa said, hi to you, Martha, and thanks the host. And Patty shared that she's heard the others who have had great success with IFS, of others who have had great success. Shadow work is so important for her. And Deborah said, thank you for the discussion. The examples you've cited are so familiar and are things and reactions that most of us have experienced. And Diane shared, she said, hi, Martha. Thank you, Cheryl and Mark, for hosting this. Martha and IFS are an amazing combo. And I absolutely agree. And Leslie says, always appreciating your wisdom, Martha.
Bless you.
So yeah, I hope that was clear enough and that came through. We are coming to the end of our show. Like, oh my goodness. What a wonderful conversation, Martha. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you wanted to say today about IFS that you thought you could share here that you haven't yet?
I would just encourage people not to believe what I say or you say, but to go check it out for themselves and their parts, and to give themselves the gift of at least trying this on to see if it's meaningful. And resistance to it would be normal based on what we've just shared here. Some part of you will resist it, and bear the resistance, allow for the resistance, kindness to the resistance, and then give it a fair test for yourself. See for yourself. And there's great benefit in it. I mean, so many of the ways that we are chronically stressing ourselves can be met and healed here through this modality. And that's not just theory with me, that is lived experiences. So we have the real potential of coming out of these fear of being a failure and rejected, and I'm not enough and I'm unworthy, and these things that really run our show. So I'm very hopeful, and I want to extend that hope.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Martha. So please like, subscribe, and share this wonderful conversation that we've had here today. I'm going to say I hope to see you next week as well. And Mark, I'll let you say ciao for now.
I'll say ciao, Bellas, and ciao to everyone, and we'll see you. I know we're out of time.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, blessings and love so much.
Bye.